All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining on this very snowy Tuesday morning for addressing burnout and improving well-being with Kim Perone. This is the first of two sessions with Kim in December, with the next one taking place next week on Thursday, December 11th at noon. It's called Centered, Staying Grounded in Uncertain Times, which is very timely with everything that's going on. Addressing burnout is our most requested training, so we're really excited that Kim was able to bring this to us again. I think it's something we'll probably look at repeating again in 2026 as well, based on the feedback we get from a lot of folks that participate in the trainings. We are able to offer this training with support from AHI's Boost program, which is funded by the Mother Cabrini Health Foundation. As you have seen, today's training will be recorded, and at the end, when the recording is available, we'll make sure that we send an email so that you're able to view it again as well. We do appreciate your feedback on today's event, as well as ideas for future topics. So near the end of the training, I will include information in the chat, which will include the link to the evaluation as well. I will send an email later today, which will also include the link. If you are requesting CECs, we do request, and it is required, that you do complete the evaluation, and we'll keep the evaluation open for about 2 weeks, and then we'll submit that information to the CEC providers. And now it's my pleasure to toss this off to Kim for today's training. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you to the funding sponsors, and so happy to be here with all of you. You're an important part of our well-being of others, and I think this, addressing burnout and improving your own well-being, hope this is a good guide. Right. So if you're new to what I do and we haven't met before, the Center for Clarity, Compassion, and Contentment is the name of my coaching practice. And as you see, my tagline is Find Your Center. And I like to joke that the Center for Clarity, Compassion, and Contentment is a long and clumsy title. And initially, 10 years ago, my marketing person was like, what? You want to call it what? But, I call it Center for C for short. But I felt strongly this is what we all want as the world gets faster and stress increases and the demands upon us and even our attention. We see it with tech and texting and social media these days, right? We need to be able to find our center. So my center is not a place you go to necessarily. I do have an office outside of the home. I'm not in it today because of the snow, but my center is not a place you go. It's a place you find inside of yourself, a sense of groundedness amidst any chaos or confusion around you. So yes, I felt like people wanted clarity, compassion, and contentment. And I hope that this webinar and then the next give you tools to make sure you can find that all the time. And burnout, as Kelly said, has been a very hot topic over the years. And let's see, sometimes, there we go, I can go forward. So what is it? What is burnout? Well, here's just the textbook definition or World Health Organization definition. So as more stress ailments came about, we needed some definition. So it was called an occupational phenomenon where burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So trainings like this is part of an effort to help manage that stress. And everything that I do works with the individual to help them also manage the stress. So hopefully your workplace has some things in place to try and manage. We have stress, but it's nice to have peaks and valleys and not have it be high and consistently across the board. This is what we want to avoid. So if we think about it from that perspective, we live in these times, and there's an acronym for the times that we live in. This is what makes it even more important when we talk about these things. And there's an acronym called VUCA. And what that stands for is volatile. We know we're living in volatile times. We see it. We watch the news. We are exposed to all kinds of news as well, as you can imagine. So we're feeling the impacts of some volatility, the uncertainty. So when the pandemic came through and we were all working together, and obviously that's when I went right from, no webinars, doing seminars in person to being virtual, is, the uncertainty. We all did a lot of adapting, and I know you did too, a huge extent. So, but the uncertainty, it really strengthened our muscle and our resilience against uncertainty. Complex times we live in, and I like to joke that my husband and I are panicked when the dog sits in the middle of us on the couch and he might accidentally step on the TV remote. Because if that happens, we might need a tech guy to fix it. Because if something gets off there, it's just too complex. It's so hard which remote works. And I joke about the dog and the TV remote, but also insurance, and you're all in the healthcare industry. Insurance is complex. I'd rather write an article or a white paper than actually fill out insurance paperwork. And I know that sounds silly, but we do live in in our modern world is very complex. And then there's that ambiguity. So there's a lot of ambiguity, and this makes us feel like that squiggle on the right side of the screen that you see there. And if you feel like that, well, it's for very real reasons. And I think this is the point of really talking about this more is we feel all scrambled, and there's a very good reason for it. We live in these VUCA times, it's modern times, and yes, was it much worse in terms of maybe survival or hardship in the past? But our modern world has a different kind of challenge, this speed, this complexity, this volatility. And because of this, and in workplaces seeing more stress, here's some data. I won't spend too long with the data, but a third of people were experiencing chronic stress. Again, that's part of it. It's not, not peaks and valleys, but this high level of chronic stress. Nearly a third were going to change jobs for the express reason of stress in their current workplace. 75% of doctors' visits due to stress. This is a huge number. And this is where, we've started to create a language around this with burnout, because doctors are seeing ailments that they can't necessarily draw any other conclusion to but stress, or it's exacerbating medical issues already. And then that cost of healthcare increasing. So all of this together for workplaces specifically was a $300 billion price tag. So it definitely got the attention of workplaces to start thinking about managing stress. How successful we've been, not sure. You can be the judge on that on a personal level. But if we move forward a little bit here, the COVID was like the stress icing on the stress cake, right? So we were already stressed, and then it threw an added layer of stress. And then the data showed, nearly 90% of adults believing work life is getting worse. So now, here's this hopelessness, really. Like I believing that our work life is getting worse and not going in the right direction. 84% reporting emotions. And in the past, and depending on your age, if you're in your 50s like me, you remember, right, there's this whole no emotions at work and all of this. Well, we have emotions for a reason. We're seeing more emotions all over. As a coach, and we'll talk about it a little bit in a second, is to be able to manage our own emotions and feel our feelings, not just tamp them down till we explode, right? So if, from a coaching perspective, it can help with that a little bit. 76% of US adults experiencing burnout. Now that's three-quarters of everyone. So it's part of it, the VUCA times, right? We're all on all the time. And then we saw some downshifting or making choices and decisions during COVID that were challenging. So, where does that leave us? So, I'm going to talk about stress versus burnout, but I'd be interested in anything you want to throw in the chat about what you think some of those statistics or the state of the workplace is today when it comes to stress. If it was a nice, peaceful workplace, was a one, and really stressed off the Richter scale was a 10. Okay, and then everything in between, what would you rate between 1 and 10? Kind of what you're feeling in terms of maybe your industry, and maybe I don't mean you specifically talking about your company, but like what you feel even around you. So I'd be, happy to have you share that in the chat if you get a sense of what you think a 1 to 10, 10 being really super stressed, 1 being a nice peaceful workplace, and everything in between there, where you might feel your sense of the stress level in your industry. And as you're doing that, stress versus burnout. So where does stress become burnout? This is where we're going to really fine tune so you can prevent or recover from burnout. Stress, high stress situations, and you're in a high stress industry to begin with, but you have that over engagement, like you're in it, it's happening, you're ready, you're bringing it. Okay, we have our reactive, or maybe in some cases overreactive emotions. We have a sense of urgency. It requires hyperactivity, and this leads to diminishing energy. Maybe feeling the loss of our energy. It leads to more anxiety. It can be physically tolling. Okay, so I'm sure you can relate to all of that. When stress moves over to burnout, here's where the overengagement flips to disengagement. And I have to say, I have my own little burnout story this year, which is exactly what I talk about. And it's that pushing away. Now you're finding it very hard to even do your work, right? You push away. You might have some numbing. Okay, so your emotions are being numbed. You feel blunted, maybe distant emotions. And what sneaks in is a sense of helplessness, maybe even hopelessness. And the motivation starts decreasing at a fast rate. And it can lead to feelings of sadness and depression, and it's extremely emotionally tolling. So I was like resting and trying to take breaks and then feeling like not as creative to create something like this webinar. So my own burnout story was, wait a minute, I'm starting to show the telltale signs of burnout. I did hit my 10th year this year, and I had to do a lot of what I'm going to talk about myself to make sure that I was kind of recovering from what I was shockingly feeling was my own burnout. So it does require your intervention. Yeah. So if you feel it, and I'm going to go even deeper into the symptoms. If you feel this exhaustion, you can't rest away. You try, you take the breaks, and then it's not working anymore. Maybe a sneaking in cynicism where it wasn't before. The lack of focus. Oh, I should back up and say my cynicism. This is how it showed up for me in my burnout example was all of a sudden, because of a downturn in the beginning of the year and even some loss of business, and really trying to be as creative as I could as an entrepreneur myself. I had my cynicism, so I'm a very optimistic person, and all of a sudden I was like, well-being's done, nobody cares about it. Now, does this make it true? No. Did I really have that thought? Yes. And we'll get to being aware of our thoughts too. It was like, that's it, it's over. Workplaces are on to the next challenge. They don't care about well-being anymore. Well, that was quite cynical, and it's not true. But this was how I started to notice the burnout that I was experiencing. A lack of focus, You might feel like I'm all over the place. When I need to focus, I can't focus. That was certainly true for me. And I'm someone with like a lot of focus. I work by myself. So I'm either with a client giving a presentation or working by myself to learn or create new material, educate myself, have resources for my clients. So I was just all over the place and I'm not used to that. Irritation. And then you have that physical feeling too. Might be headaches, gut aches, the overuse of comforts, like, food and drink, maybe. The disengagement, again, huge piece. The biggest indicator, I think, was like I was pushing away from my work and wanting to do anything else, which was not the case up until 2025, I have to say. So, what did I do and what you can do is to improve your well-being. Some of this is going to sound very ordinary, but there might be some new ways that I'm going to describe it in terms of how important it is. And the first of which is really when we recreate or take a break, we have to really do that. And in today's world, it's very hard to really do that, to be where we are. And if we're at the lake, which is nice to think about right now with the snow coming down, although it's quite pretty, but if we take a break, it's easy to be in our thoughts about work and our stresses and everything else. Our brains are that strong that our brain actually wants to be wherever else we are. This is what makes mindfulness so important. And it's hard to take a break. I know a lot of people aren't fully off when they're off, and this accumulates. And I think that was even part of uh, my example, like I can be at the lake reading material to create a new webinar and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's very joyful for me. But maybe what I saw this year in feeling a little burnt out was like, I need to do something different on purpose and take a break from that. Because even though that's been my joy, the accumulation effect was leading to burnout. The next, when it comes to sleep, again, yes, sleep's important. We hear this everywhere, but there are a lot of things that can interrupt our sleep. And so even drinking. So when I was mentioning, the overuse of food, comfort, maybe comfort drinking, comfort, when we go to comfort ourselves, these things can sometimes interrupt our sleep, and then that has an accumulative effect. We also need more sleep than we think. And so 7 to 9 hours. And most people operate with a lot less than that. And sometimes it's even hard to fall asleep. So when you see a lot of articles will talk about preparing yourself for sleep and calming down or, making sure you're not on your screens before you sleep. Don't read your emails in case there's one where there's something you need to work on that's problem area tomorrow. We don't want to go to sleep and marinate in that all night, right? Those types of things. So thinking about sleep or taking a break as if it's your job. That's a whole different dynamic because we think about off times and we think about work times, but sometimes we need to think about our off times like it's our job. Your job depends on it. You can't have everyone leaving their workplaces. It's not good for society. We don't want you running from the building, wanting to get out of your career, doing something different. So this is where workplaces really do care about well-being. My own, negative mindset at the beginning of 2025 was wrong, right? Workplaces do care about well-being and sometimes we just don't know how. When it comes to eating well, again, more of an obvious example, but again, thinking about it like it's your job, taking care of your body, this wonderful, amazing body that allows you to do everything else in your life, and then using your mental energy or your physical energy to do that well, like it's your job, as much as your job is your job. And that's maybe the more nuanced piece of it, a little bit different. Like it's my job because I'm not functioning as well. If I feel burnt out, I'm not functioning as well. So I need to take care of my body. literally, when it comes to exercise, which I'm just skipping over the other two to get to other exercise because my own personal example was my brain was not working. And when I started walking on my treadmill, because I get too bored. And so I would, learn something or watch something fun on the TV. It keeps me walking. I noticed my brain started working better. So the burnout was creating a brain fog where I couldn't think straight and I was all over the place, but my movement started to get my brain working. So I was really living this out this year. So the exercise, the other warning on exercise as it relates to burnout is to be very careful. The overachievers out there are going to recognize this example. It would be like, well, I need to start moving more. I've always wanted to run that marathon. I need to lose a little weight. And next thing you know, you've got this overblown exercise plan that now your inner teenager is like resisting, right? It's almost like too fast, too far. Often in coaching, we pull people back, right? Pull people back, moving in a way that feels good, that doesn't press. Start little, move forward, right? Don't try and kill three birds with one stone. Where we'll be like, uber productive people will be like, if this checks five boxes, okay, we're going to do it. But I don't want you to do exercise like it's punishment. And if you get there, just pull back. So now I'll back up to do something new. The last thing when we're stressed out, when we move into burnout, the last thing that we actually think to do, maybe you all might have some great examples on this, is to do something new. You're like, oh, I'm really stressed out and burnt out. I need a new hobby. For at first we just tend to be burnt out and stressed out and maybe binge watch some TV. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but so picking up that new hobby is great for your brain. It engages flow. And whatever it is, your brain starts to just settle into it and time just goes away. And, you do something, and you're like, oh, it's been 3 hours. So in a busy life, you see how counterintuitive that is. But it's so good for your brain that's been on chronic stress and maybe chronic unmanaged stress doing a lot of the same thing to actually break up that. And that's a different kind of break. That's a different kind of break that can help you improve your well-being. Establishing boundaries is another area. And I had mentioned the looking at emails before you go to bed. That's one. Boundaries with yourself, right? Boundary thinking about work when you're in your off time, your brain will tootle over there, but then just gently bring it back. These are our boundaries for ourselves. But really, how many people like to ask for help? We might need to establish a boundary with others. I know as caregivers, you give a lot and you help a lot. And caregivers in general see unspoken needs, and not everyone does that. But that which we do well, we think just is ordinary, and other people recognize that that's your skill, but maybe they don't. And you just pick up on what needs to be done better than other people do. So establishing boundaries of if you need help, asking asking someone. If you would like someone else to do something, being brave enough to ask them, avoiding martyrdom, avoiding resentful yeses when you say yes, 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 and then it's not a real yes. It's a resentment. So resentment in and of itself, if you feel resentful about anything, you backtrack it to what boundary needs to be created because it is a red flag for a boundary. And so think a little bit, right? We can't change everything in our life, but if we feel resentment, we can back into the answer on what boundary we need. And I've already mentioned exercise, and then learning to control our thoughts is a big area, as you can imagine in coaching. When people tell me their stresses and even their burnout story, I don't have a lot of control over talking to everyone else in their life and making those changes, right? I can only tell that person how to respond to those other things in their life. So our thoughts and our own inner coach, cultivating your inner coach, are ways forward. So to begin with that, really, on the thought side of things, this is the absolute fundamental piece that I share with everyone, every client individually, every group, every webinar. It's often repeated in all the webinars because this is the foundational piece. We are not our thoughts. We are human beings having thoughts. This is what our brain does, and it's evolved to be very strong problem solvers for us. And it can be where we're not. We can think about work when we're at home. Think about home when we're at work. Our ancestors were very alert to danger and they lived. It was a survival mechanism. And we are all the descendants of the people in the past, our ancestors who did it the best. And they survived. They ran away from the saber-toothed tiger. And so our brains have evolved to be very strong problem solvers. The reason why I have ego versus being here is because that's how I like to think about it. To get a little distance between our thoughts, which will, because the brain has that negativity bias, is the name for it, how our brains have evolved. Our brain, the ego, as we call it in coaching, wants to look out, see threats, see risks, manage problems, be your safety officer. And that's all fine and well, but it can keep us in our problems or in a negative space 24/7, which has an absolute drain effect. There's where the burnout can come to pass, or depleted energy. So this is a key to know, okay, I'm a person having thoughts, to see that as a part of you, not all of you. That narration in your head is like, isn't that me? I'm talking up here. And we are, but it's a part of you. And I want to share with you the other part of you so that you can just see your thoughts, not be your thoughts, as you see on the right-hand side. See your thoughts, don't be your thoughts, is the shorthand for this technique. The other part of you, aside from the thinking, is your being. And I generally kind of put my hands in this part of my body, right? When I think of that, this is where I think of it. Your beingness, the essence of who you are, who you've always been, no matter the circumstance, no matter the job, even when you were a kid, before a job. It's the you that's always looked out from behind your eyes. And we may not have good words for that, but if you can get a sense of the you you've always been, the essence of who you are, that is your beingness.
Scared.
And that part of you is here for the experience of life. And some of it's good, and some of it's hard, and some of it's horrible, and some of it's joyful. So this part of you can answer and speak back to the thoughts. And so this is an immediate stress reduction exercise. When I have a thought that is worrisome and I can question that thought, is that really true? And my best example for this is if I wake up in the morning and I know I'm giving a 9 a.m. webinar, but I'm not good at waking up in the morning very easily. So as I'm thinking about what I have to do at 9 o'clock in the morning, which is a couple hours later, oh no, I don't have the energy to do a presentation today. Or yesterday I traveled to downtown Albany as an example, right? If I woke up in the morning and I had a full calendar, if you have a full day and you think, I don't have the energy to do what I have to do today, does it make it true? We have to be able to question that, right? We are not our thoughts. It's normal. For me, I just need more coffee because I don't wake up like ready to go like my husband does. His feet hit the floor and he is on the run. So it's important for us to get that little bit of distance with our thoughts, and it can help reduce our own stress in the moment at any time. And obviously we could all, go deeper. And I will go a little bit deeper when we do the grounded, because we'll work on some exercises to keep you grounded and centered all the time. This is just the foundational piece. Our emotions are another piece. Feeling our feelings is good emotional hygiene, not stuffing, 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 and then having it explode, okay, later. And it often takes a lot less time than we think to feel our feelings. If we can get articulate, this is how simple this is. If we can get articulate, and you see here just an emotion wheel, and it's a generic one. I literally just Googled emotion wheel. So there's many out there if you're interested in seeing any emotion wheels and all the different titles of emotions. If we see, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed, um, it's important that I go, what am I feeling right now? I'm maybe angry. Maybe there's disappointment. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe I'm bored. Maybe that's why I'm all over the place, right? So getting a little more in tune is good emotional hygiene. It's as simple as that. Like recognize your feelings. You have them for a reason. I think the numbing comes when we keep pushing our feelings down and not feeling it. It takes a lot less time to actually feel it than to stuff like get that good emotional hygiene going. And we'll talk more about that next time as well. Mindfulness, another technique. That left cloud says it all, right? We can all relate to that. That is where our brain can be everywhere else we aren't. There's the to-do list, all in that thought cloud while that cartoon figure is walking his or her dog, right? And then being in the right cloud is really difficult. It's very difficult. So mindful, Full versus mindful, being in the present moment, non-judgmentally, just enjoying what you're doing in the moment. And this time of year too, it could be a hot cup of tea. Um, Something simple. And so I often like to listen to the birds sometimes as an actual mindful technique to break this constant thought pattern and busyness. Okay, so it can be something very quick, but be where you are. Whenever you can just be where you are. And I think in some ways, this is happening for you a lot, because I bet when you're with patients and, for those of you that have some direct contact with patients, you are fully engaged in that moment in what's happening. Children, pets, they do that for us. We're fully in the present with them, oftentimes. So, in that non-judgmentally, that's hard because our brain likes to evaluate everything. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this up? Is this down? The brain wants to categorize everything, just like this bookshelf behind me. Like, where does it fit? I have to label it. And we really don't have to do that as much. So think about that non-judgmental, mindful piece is like, I'm just observing the present moment. I'm not judging it, right? Give your brain a chance to do that. That'll help. Another area that can help, this is just a micro mindful meditation, and you might do this with me right now for just like a minute, and you will be able to do it all by yourself at any time. It, A, B, C, D. So if you were to just settle into your seat where you are, where you have been, but you settle in and you start noticing, like you might take a soft downward gaze. You might close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. Just start noticing the weight in your chair, the contact the back of your legs are making on the chair, the room temperature. You might even start to notice the room temperature. Is it comfortable? Is it cold? Is it warm? And just get anchored where you are in your physicality. Your feet are on the floor. And you feel the bottom of your feet in your shoe or against the floor. And after settling in with that anchor, just that sense of anchoring yourself, you begin breathing. And you have been breathing. So it's just begin noticing your breathing and not changing it, but just notice the inhales, the exhales. And you actively put your attention on that breath. So do that for a minute. And you might even begin counting rounds of breath. The inhale, the exhale. And any distraction, including the sound of my voice right now, or a noise outside, or you lose count of the breaths, you just simply begin again. You just gently bring your attention back to this moment and your breath or your anchor. And now you can just sort of come back out of that if you were doing that little meditation. Time really slows down, which is nice for our brain to feel that. It's the distraction is not my mind doesn't do this well. The distraction is like picking up a barbell and bringing it back, your attention, bringing it back again and again to where you want to put your attention. This is a perfect exercise. This micro meditation is a perfect stress interrupter. If you need to take a moment, maybe you take a moment to do this. The fact that we can train ourselves. Like I said, it's like a barbell, right? If you pick a barbell up once, you didn't build a muscle. If you do it over and over again, you start to build the muscle. And picking up our attention and putting it where we want it, like on something neutral, like just sitting in our seat for a minute or two, can slow down time, can help us think straight, and activate the body's relaxation response, which keeps us in our high functioning brain. So there's a lot going on when there's not much going on, right? So I hope that you find that this is something you might experiment with a little bit as a micro meditation. The next technique I want to share with you is just thinking about where you hold your stress. And you can throw that in the chat. Where do you hold your stress? Do you know? Do you know? How do you know? Is it, where is it? For me, it's in the pit of my stomach. That's when I know. That's what tells me, or a fluttering in my chest. I don't know, like an anxious feeling. I'm like, oh, okay. This is telling me the feelings that I'm feeling right now. A lot of people say shoulders and neck. So yeah, just knowing that when you notice it, you can take a breath. Activate the relaxation response with your breath, maybe a couple inhales and exhales, or, even rubbing your shoulders or, just loosening up a bit, right? Just the act of recognizing it instead of staying unconscious, busy, 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 not noticing, right? Where we're the back to those doctor's visits, 75% due to stress. Like if we just keep holding it in there, holding it in, I want it to be a flow. Stress is happening. It's okay, but it's flowing through me. Similar with the emotions. Now, this is the physical part, the tension. Want you to think about it as like it's flowing through me. It's not staying in me. Another technique is stepping back and looking at the big picture. So this is more of a panning back, a big picture perspective. And more more often than not, when you do that, if one area, and say for burnout, it might be career, it's like, unmanaged chronic stress that you're feeling, when you step back and you look at the big picture of life, this 0 to 10, on 0 being unfulfilled, 10 being very fulfilled, can give you a sense that things are more okay than not okay. And even that can reduce your stress. In the event that does happen in life, where there are perfect storms of events, like you might be having, a lot of stress at work and going through a lot of stress in your personal life, and maybe that's affected finance, and then you see like, wow, I have like 3 areas that are being hit hard right now. That's okay. Don't be afraid to look at that, because you recognizing that for yourself, that's a very real hardship in life, and this is an area of specialty for me in resilience coaching, is that actually a predictable kind of time of life. So to not judge yourself too harshly about it, right? It's just a point of clarity. It's a point where you can have self-compassion. Like, of course, no wonder I feel so much stress, right? I'm getting, that I've got 3 areas of my well-being here in this life wheel, and they're being hit hard right now. That's when you can give yourself some self-compassion. So whether it helps you feel like, okay, things are more stable, maybe more certainty in my life when I'm feeling uncertainty, or whether it's like, yeah, it's a recognition of little self-compassion that things are really tough right now. This panning back and looking at your overall well-being in these categories can help a great deal. Again, clarity is key. Where do we go from there? Self-care planning. Self-care is not selfish. It's not self-indulgent. So I do want you to, recognize. I'm thinking there's a correlation between caregiving, giving care to others, the whole field, and the industry that you're in, where you probably put yourselves last. And the people today who are like, oh, no, I don't, it's probably because you got to a point where you knew you needed to take care of yourself. So it needs to be intentional. Don't wait for someone else to do something that gives you self-care, that friend to take you away for the weekend or something like that. You want to find something that works for you, what recharges you. You want it to be proactive, scheduled, or, make time in a daily sense for it. And it helps you to be sustainable. It's really critical. Again, back to the beginning, we can't have everyone wanting to leave any industry, right? When I talk to other workplaces too, that's not the goal. So self-care often becomes like a part of your job. And I want you to start weaving that in ways. And sometimes it takes a lot of creativity. Understandably, a lot of creativity in a busy life. How do I do this? How do I make time to do things that recharge me? But it's worth contemplating. So one of the slides here is a tool. It's an actual worksheet, and it just gives you some areas to write a couple thoughts. What does self-care mean to you professionally? Is it being here and taking the time to learn this today? What is it physically? Psychologically or emotionally? Maybe there's a debrief that you have between walking into your house and finishing your work day. Maybe it is starting to get, use that feeling wheel, and like just noticing your emotions in the moment, doing emotional hygiene. Those are just areas for you to brainstorm what self-care looks for you. And what I want to point out too is that intention. How do you want to feel? It's often in our busy modern culture that we don't think that matters. And it matters a lot how you want to feel. You want to feel inspired. You want to feel engaged. And burnout is the opposite, right? Burnout is the loss of motivation, and it's the disengagement. So especially recovering from burnout, self-care becomes very important, and how you feel, that energy you bring with you everywhere, right? Your energy matters. And then just a note on some short-term and long-term goals. The thing I like about the short-term goals and breaking it up is that sometimes, again, the plan gets too grand and then maybe it's not doable. So in coaching, we're often pulling people back to what are little bite-sized chunks? What is something that you can do to care for yourself and then grow from that point? Like maybe there's more, but you don't need to start with all of it and then feel like it's failed or there wasn't time, right? I don't want that self-sabotage to come in. Back to the point of self-compassion, absolutely essential. And Brene Brown and Kristen Neff are two researchers, and I put their websites here because if you're really hard on yourself and you never give yourself or want to alleviate your own stress, you're always worrying about doing that for other people. Their websites are very generous in terms of things that they give, like a guided meditation, or other materials, nice ways to think about it. Brene Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection is really great too. It's a short little book, and she has a great TED Talk on being vulnerable. But both of these researchers have found that in the big picture, the research shows if we are kind to ourselves, we accomplish more. It's not that, oh, then we don't achieve, right? That tough inner critic is why I'm so successful. Well, that's not sustainable. And it might be very true that it gets things going for you in your life. But the important thing to know is overall, you can accomplish much more. You can motivate yourself much better with kindness. You can reduce your stress in the moment too, when you're kind to yourself, especially in a moment of overwhelm. So I offer that. You aren't just your life is not just so that you can show compassion to others, because I know that you all do. It's also important you show it to yourself. It's vitally important, and these researchers have a lot of good techniques. So in conclusion, and again, we have the second part, which is nice to say that and to know that we have the second part to go into how do we stay grounded for next time. But to reflect on some of the techniques here, take time off. It may just sound trite, but like in terms of giving yourself some real breaks where you can. And if it's difficult to do that, think about why it's difficult to do that, because we can do more interaction next time. If you'd like to actually use some examples, come with some examples. I want you to, maybe use the life wheel to step back and reflect on life. Practice mindfulness. Allow yourself to be where you are in the moment, not multitasking all the time. That's just not good for our brain. It does lead to chronic stress. Develop a self-care plan. What works for you? What's realistic? What helps you recharge? And show yourself compassion. You are deserving of your own compassion. And again, don't forget to breathe. I know that I catch myself all the time. If I get very stressed, my breathing gets very shallow. And our breath activates that relaxation response, which sounds like exactly the opposite of what we want when we're bringing a lot of effort and energy into work. But most of our modern work requires our high functioning brain. So the breath keeps us in our highest functioning brain and not our cave brain, the one that wants to run away from danger. So it makes the breath so important, but it's also so readily available to us. And with that, we have some time for a couple of questions. And I just want to, recognize that all of you you do very difficult work, and you do need to dig into deeper powers, I'm sure, in your workplaces, in your life. and when times feel most challenging. So if anyone's going through a very difficult time right now, I want to recognize that we dig into wells that we didn't know we had, wells of and reserves in our resilience. So I would like to encourage you that absolutely, absolutely to be resilient and to take good care of yourself, and your well-being matters. With that, I'm going to stop sharing. And if anyone has any questions, I'll move over. And now I can see some of the chat here, which is great.
I was going to mention, Kim, it seemed like folks rated the level of stress in their industry and around them anywhere from a 3 to a 9, but more seemed to be like in the 5 to 7 or 8 range.
Okay. Okay. That's in very good and interesting to see, right? I feel like a lot of what we've learned over the last several years about well-being, where if you think back I'm trying to think about 5 years back, we weren't really using that term all the time. And now it's on everyone's minds, and it matters. I feel like we really pushed that forward. So I appreciate people's sharing with that. Any other thoughts? Thank you, Francis. Yeah, work with some of these tools, right? Keep them handy. If you have the slides, don't necessarily put them in a drawer, right? Or maybe the drawer right near you, right? To use some of the techniques. And we'll go into more techniques with the grounded, this part two. So I hope to see more of you, all of you in part two as well. And anyone who's just watching the recording too. I appreciate you watching.
I did put the evaluation in the chat, and I will send an email later today as well that will have the link to the evaluation. But we'll appreciate your feedback on today's session, and maybe there's some information we can bring in to the training next week as well if anything pops up within the evaluation.
Yeah, absolutely. Kelly can let me know, and I'll make sure I work it in.
Excellent. All right, I am going to. Well, there is something that just popped up in the chat.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Crystal. How do we acknowledge it so it can be addressed? Yeah, notice the patterns, and noticing does a lot, Crystal. So I feel like if you if acknowledging it often, maybe just touching it and thinking about it, thinking about the energy being in your body, that might feel a little woo-woo, but healing touch is something that our body responds to in a relaxation response. So how can it be addressed at that moment? I think, maybe actually making a movement like touching the area that you feel stressed in, right? It's like a move of self-compassion. So thank you, Crystal, for that question. Great. Well, thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you everyone for participating, and I hope that we'll see everyone next week.
Yeah,
Stay
see you
safe
next
today.
week. Yeah, stay safe and warm.
Bye bye,
Take care.
everyone.
Thank you.